Hello, how are you, Tina? I finished my hat. I wanted to wear it, show you all. It's a little tight, but I used a 4.5 millimeter, whereas Crystal at Bag of Day used a J. I'll try a 5 millimeter next time I make it. How are you, Tina? I'm so glad you're here. How are you? I learned a lot so far in this study. It's nice to get clarification. Tina's in the ads. Thank you. We are studying Matthew chapter 5. We are still in the Beatitudes. We studied the first 4 yesterday, and I will reread it to you. The Beatitudes, Matthew verses 3 through 12. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You can't hear me? Try unmuting it. Mine is not muted, and it says I'm working. My sound is working. Now I can, after the end. Okay. Matthew, the Beatitudes, chapter 5. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We studied that yesterday. That's the first one. The second one, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. The third one is, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And 4 is, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. We studied those yesterday. And there was a lot there, yes. Cause and effect. Let's take the remaining 4 Beatitudes, stack them on top of one another, and place them side by side with the first 4 Beatitudes. Notice that there is a direct one-on-one cause and effect correspondence between the first 4 and the final 4 Beatitudes. Does that sound confusing? Number 5 is the merciful. Blessed are the merciful. Jesus said that poor in spirit people are granted the grand privilege of becoming the citizens of the kingdom. Such is the mercy of God. Doesn't it make sense that the recipients of God's mercy ought to be the first to dispense mercy to those who need it. Good morning, Tina or Timmy. How are you? So the merciful are those who are poor in spirit, right? So one-on-one correlation. Consider this example. Who was the one guy to show mercy to Jesus as he hung upon a cross? The answer might surprise some people. One of the two thieves who hung on the cross with him. Thief one hurled verbal hand grenades at Jesus, literally adding insults to injuries. Thief number two sought to shut him up by shouting, "Do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we, indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong." You can find that story in Luke chapter 23, verses 40 and 41. Thief 2 was poor in spirit. And wouldn't you know, Thief 2 was merciful. He admitted that he was a sinner. He knew that he deserved to be punished for his sins. That thief both gave and received mercy. It was to that thief Jesus said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." That is Luke 23, verse 43. Okay, the next one. Blessed are the pure in heart. God blesses those who mourn over their sins by comforting them. He offers to them his mercy, cleansing, and forgiveness. Those who mourn don't hide their sins. They admit them. They do not cover up their sins. They expose them to the searchlights of God's holiness. They do not live in denial about their sins. They confess them. David first had to pray, "Against you have I sinned," in Psalm 51, verse 4, before he could ask God to create in me a clean heart, in 51, verse 10. Only after he mourned was David transformed or made pure in his heart, clean, sincere, honest to God about his thoughts, words, and actions, attitudes, and motives. The order here is most significant. First came his confession, then came his cleansing. That goes for all of us. We need to confess first before we are cleansed. What was true for David is equally true for us. Okay, so pure in heart was number 2. The second one. The merciful was the 5th one, first one we studied today. The second one is pure in heart. Blessed are the pure in heart. The next one is blessed are the peacemakers. Israelis have a common expression that they universally use when greeting one another. They smile, hug, or shake hands, and they say shalom. The word is commonly translated as peace. But as so often happens, we lose its deeper meaning in the translation. Shalom expresses one's heartfelt desire for God to bestow his very best upon another. Shalom to all of you. Our Jewish friends understand that in a world where people are so easily divided from one another, God's people share the common bond of his blessing. Only the meek, those who put God's agenda ahead of their own, can truly be at peace with each other as they lay their petty differences aside for the greater good of God's cause, and then seek his best in their lives. Just as Paul asked Paul about his knockdown, drag-out contention with Barnabas over including Mark on his ministry team. Only when Paul finally came to his senses and meekly put God's agenda ahead of his own did he request Mark's company, heal his divided relationship, and regard Mark as useful in the ministry. The next one, blessed are those who are persecuted. Okay, the Apostle Paul made a statement in Colossians 1:24. I now rejoice in my sufferings. This was written by a guy who has suffered a lot. Okay, he wrote those words in a dark, dank dungeon. Then in 2 Corinthians 11, verses 24 through 28, he offered his readers a litany of some of his many sufferings. If anyone was qualified to write, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution, as he wrote in 2 Timothy 3:12, it was Paul. We can understand why he suffered, but why he rejoiced in it is another matter. Paul explained in Colossians, can you imagine rejoicing in your sufferings? Paul explained that the hatred of his persecutors was not primarily directed at him, but at Jesus. Since Jesus wasn't around anymore, they vented their rage against the next best available target, the followers of Jesus. So that's what we can expect. And many people around the world are experiencing that persecution for being Christians, being followers of Jesus. In our country, we're not there yet. And I hope it doesn't come up in my lifetime. I just want a quick death. So they can kill me, but don't render me useless in this world, unable to care for myself. Paul understood that Jesus hung on a cross in a public place and took the shots that were meant for him. Paul's greatest privilege then was to stand in Jesus's place and take the shots that were meant for him. That's our greatest privilege as well. Persecution in one form or another, the mockery of family or friends, unfair treatment at the office, a poor grade from a hostile teacher, the loss of money due to a refusal to fudge the truth about an inferior product is the promised destiny of all who hunger and thirst to live righteously. For the remainder of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus will tell us exactly what it means to live righteously. We now have come full circle, ending up where we began. The peace or the poor in spirit are blessed because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Those who are persecuted are blessed because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Sandwiched in between are the 6 additional qualities that define the character of the true citizen of that kingdom. Those who strive to have a beatitude attitude. Verse 13 is titled The Spice of Life. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. Salt does more than add a zesty taste to a gourmet delicacy. Sprinkle a little salt on meat, and an amazing chemical reaction takes place. Salt acts as a preservative that shows or retards the rate of decay. We need to be saltier in this earth. Amen? To prevent or to slow the rate of decay, because it has been crazy. Jesus used this zesty little metaphor to illustrate the dynamic force we can exert as a preservative, retarding the rate of decay in our culture of compromise. By itself, 1 grain of salt may seem utterly inadequate and woefully insignificant. But grab a salt shaker, sprinkle multiple grains of salt on some food, and voila. Our tiny taste buds leap for joy at the mouth-watering sensation a little salt can bring. Taken together, we are a force to be reckoned with, right? I was thinking the same thing. All right. Hi, Kiki. How are you? I didn't see you earlier. Glad you're here. Okay. I want to talk about the Beatitudes and the definition. Poor in spirit. The definition: to approach a holy God as a humble sinner, casting ourselves upon his mercy. That's what it means to be poor in spirit. We humble ourselves before God. Blessed are those who mourn. Mourning is the definition: to be genuinely sorry for and broken over our sin. Meek, placing God's purposes above our own, being concerned about the things that concern God. Hunger and thirst is to long to please God in everything we do for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful responding to other sinners with the same mercy with which God responded to us. The pure in heart, living in sincerity and honesty before God, who holds us accountable for the choices we make. Peacemakers, bringing people together in unity who would otherwise be divided over petty personal issues. Blessed are the peacemakers. And the persecuted, choosing to suffer for one's beliefs when the pressure is on to compromise. Does anybody have an example of that? I was working at a convenience store when I was in college, and they were making a big thing on the news about people not selling cigarettes to minors. A 13-year-old kid came into the store to buy a pack of cigarettes for his mother. I wouldn't sell them to him. I would not sell them to him. Then I talked to my manager, told them about it, and they said, we sell them to him on a regular basis. We know he's, he buys them for his mom. He looked like a good kid. He came in alone, but I refused. I says, I'm not going to jail because I sold cigarettes to a minor. Back then, that was, that's when it started coming out that they were saying stuff like that reporting stuff like that on the news. Yeah, people giving you the okay to break the law. I don't know. So does anybody else have any examples? Things are morally wrong too. Just a little white lie, right? Okay, you light up my life. I'm going to read this in the New King James Version, verses 14 through 16. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a blanket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. A lie is a lie, and lies don't become the truth ever, right? Jesus, the master of the metaphor, compared us to salt, a preservative in a decaying society, and to light, a brilliant beacon of direction and hope to a darkened world of confused and hurting people. If we liken the forces of compromise in our culture to the winds and waves of a raging storm, we serve as a lighthouse of truth against the deepening darkness of deceit. Okay, there is a section here called saying apply it. Jesus referred to his followers when he said, "You are the light of the world," in Matthew 5:14. He referred to himself when he said, "I am the light of the world," in John 8:12. Jesus is the source of light. We reflect his light. This is exactly what Paul had in mind when he wrote the church in Philippi, a darkened city in its own right, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. That's Philippians 2:15. Okay, our firm foundation. Verses 17 and 18 says, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled." So Jesus paused at this point in his sermon to underscore this very important foundational fact of the Christian life. The Bible is reliable and we can trust it. We can live our lives by it. We can share its truth with others without fear of contradiction. We can shine its light. Man, this is so good. Why did Jesus make this point here? Because at times our salt loses its flavor, and our blazing beacon of light can falter and flicker and be put under a basket. Discouragement and doubt can render ineffective the saltiest salt or the brightest of lights. Discouragement and doubt can sometimes make it not as our salt and light, not as shining and glowing. Remember the words winds and waves we talked about? After the storms of opposition, pummel us relentlessly with their winds of deceit. It's easy to fall into the quicksand of discouragement and doubt. It happened to Elijah. If you remember, Elijah went before King Ahab and Jezebel, and 400 prophets of Baal died in there. And then he had that doubt and he wanted to die. Remember that? At a time of profound discouragement, he wanted to lie down and die. Jezebel wanted him dead. It happened to our old friend John the Baptist. In a time of doubt-filled desperation, he needed to have his beliefs affirmed. The same thing can and probably will happen to us. Jesus knew it would, so he provided the surefire antidote to such attacks of the enemy. The next time we are tempted to doubt the Bible, we can call to memory Jesus' absolute and unequivocal affirmation of the Bible. And then it was key point. It was Jesus's way of assuring us that when our world starts collapsing down around us, when the winds of persecution begin to blow, when we don't know where to turn, we can rely totally and completely on the truth of God's word to sustain us even during our most desperate hours. We can trust the Bible. We can trust the God of the Bible. Kiki says, I remember discouragement can lead to depression. Yes. Verses 19 and 20 in the New King James Version. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Wow. Talk about rocking the boat in his time that he was on earth. The scribes and Pharisees were like our government officials. So unless your righteousness exceeds their righteousness, you're going to hell. So in other words, the scribes and Pharisees are going to hell, is what he said. So when he said that, how's that for throwing down the gauntlet? Jesus took a meat cleaver and cut the crowd in two. The religious leaders on one side and the common folk on the other. Don't be like your leaders, said Jesus. Hello, Elaine. How are you? Yeah, the government wouldn't have much of a chance in your opinion. Yeah. Elaine says, I just got home. What a beautiful day the Lord has made today. Yes, lucky you. It's nice here too. Tina says, hi, Elaine. Yeah, unless they repent. Yes. Don't be like your leaders, Jesus told them. I'm calling you to a different standard. Don't be proud in spirit like your leaders, but be poor in spirit. Don't be haughty about how holy you are, but mourn how sinful you are. Don't put your interests ahead of God's, but put God's interests ahead of your own. Don't hunger and thirst for power over people, but hunger and thirst to make right choices before your God. This was the righteousness that Jesus was talking about. These were the characteristics of the true citizens of the kingdom. The Beatitudes set the standard to which he was calling the people. No wonder the people were amazed by him. No wonder the leaders hated him. Righteousness from the inside out. That's kind of what this is all about, this Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 5:20 is the thematic statement of the sermon. It also serves as a transition, a bridge, linking the introduction with the body of this or main section of the sermon. Between his intriguing introduction and his compelling conclusion, Jesus offers his audience example after example of just how their righteousness must surpass that of the scribes and Pharisees and become a righteousness of motives and deeds and not just words. Yeah, your sister from Florida. Oh, okay. Elaine said, my sister from Florida said they are okay. Thank God. Yes. Praise God. And Timmy says she's waiting to hear from her sister on how she's doing after her surgery. I pray it all went well. That's Christy, right? Lord, I lift her up to you. Jesus carefully crafted several illustrations to demonstrate that if we have truly made a genuine commitment to Christ, that commitment will be shown not merely by our words, but by our works, not just by our talk, but by our walk, not only by our platitudes, but by the beatitudes that influence our daily choices. Praying it went well and may she have a speedy recovery. Yes. Okay, but by the Beatitudes that influence our daily choices. Don't think of these illustrations as points of an outline, but rather as movements of his message. Jesus cuts through the religious hypocrisy to get to the heart of the matter. Jesus is looking for behavior based upon belief, character, how we live, that is determined by our convictions. So, how we live, that is determined by what we believe, an obedient lifestyle that flows from the inside out. Please keep in mind that Jesus is not demanding perfection in the lives of his followers, but he is rather looking at the direction of our lives. True citizens of his kingdom purpose, strive, seek, and set as a passionate goal to live in obedience to the standards that Jesus establishes here. Of course, sincere followers of Jesus fall short of living up to his standards every day. How should we react when we do? We fall short. How should we react? He already told us, humbly approach God, humble in spirit, with a genuine brokenness over our sin. So we are mourning our faltering. As we place God's purposes above our own, that's meek, while desiring to make right choices, we're hungering and thirsting for righteousness, for his glory. Get the point? Jesus never gave us this sermon title, but an appropriate one might be righteousness from the inside out. Verses 21 through 26. And then I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to read all of the next part because it really spoke to me. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are on the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Assuredly, I say to you, you will by no means get out of there till you have paid the last penny. I didn't get all of that done. I was stuck on the name calling and being angry with your brother or sister. Throughout the main body of his sermon, Jesus introduces his illustration with this couplet, "You have heard that it was said," which is a reference to what their religious leaders taught them. And "but I say to you," which signifies the standards of righteousness that Jesus decrees for the true citizens of his kingdom. In each case, Jesus takes an outward act, murder, adultery, stealing, etc., and turns it inward to hate, lust, and envy. First example of the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees is murder. There wasn't a scribe or Pharisee within miles of the scene of this sermon who thought himself guilty of murder. The religious leaders boasted that they were holy men because they valued human life. They committed no acts of murder like the heathen did. Just the worrying steals your joy of today, so does anger. Yep. Okay. Yet all the while, these leaders of the Jews plotted, planned, and purposed to kill Jesus at their first opportunity. They were the ones who systematically turned the people against their own Messiah. How hypocritical. I shared those Bible verses regarding anger in my Tuesday videos. Awesome. How we should deal with anger. Wonderful. You might remember when the Pharisees brought to Jesus a woman caught in the act of adultery and wanted to stone her to death. They weren't interested in justice. If they were, they would have exposed the man as well. After all, she was caught in the very act, wasn't she? Can't commit adultery by yourself, right? All right. Where was their compassion? Where was their grace? Where was their mercy? Did not their demand for her execution unmask a deep-seated hatred for a woman whom they considered worthless, a throwaway, a thing rather than a person? Jesus entered the fray and exposed the hypocrisy of people and priests alike when he said that anyone who harbored hatred in his heart toward another was guilty of murder. The king issued his decree. This monarch set his standard. The citizens of his kingdom were not to hate other people. So Jesus had some interesting imagery in Matthew 5:22. Why would someone who calls someone else a fool be in danger of hellfire? Seems a bit extreme, doesn't it? The specific term that Jesus chose is a slanderous, injurious word that is often translated in secular Greek literature as godless. Raka was then common and highly offensive epithet. Only a hate-filled person would say that. One does not have to murder on the outside to harbor hatred on the inside. We may not use weapons to murder a body, but we may use words to morally wound a soul. Neither is acceptable to God. I had to point that out. Kids are so cruel in schools. When I substitute, when I was in school, kids were so cruel. This is the part that really hit me, though. Does Jesus's message mean that if we swear at someone in anger, we are in danger of hell? Not necessarily. It does mean that if we are not humbled by it, meaning poor in spirit, or broken by it, mourning about it, seeking God's and the person's forgiveness for it, which is meekness, and wanting to respond rightly to it, hungering for righteousness, we have good reason to wonder if we truly are citizens of the kingdom of heaven. So are people, Michelle? I don't understand what you're saying. Remember, Jesus is not concerned with the perfection of our lives as he is the direction of our lives. And that's where we're going to stop for today. So we went up to verse 27 today. This is a long chapter and it is jam-packed. I'm thinking we'll finish it tomorrow. Timmy says people are just as bad as kids, Michelle. The children learn it from the adults. That's just being mean, calling names, being rotten, whatever. It's all the same to me. True. Yeah, it's sad. So Jesus defined righteousness as coming from the inside out. In other words, true righteousness goes deeper than outward actions to the inner motives of the heart. I would tell my kids not to make fun of someone. I've done that many times. And my son, when he was in high school, I heard about this from somebody else. I forget who. Maybe one of his friends. But he was on the football team, okay? Well, one of the kids on the football team was harassing a kid who limped, who had a foot that wouldn't, and he kind of backed him into against the lockers and stuff like that. Joseph saw that and he put a stop to it and told his buddy from football to stop ridiculing other people. I've told them many times about my past and how I I still want to cry when I think about it. So my kids knew not to make fun of people because you don't know what they went through. You don't know. And this kid, he says, I can't help it. And I was in an accident, and this is what happened. He knew it was not a good thing to do because I've told him many times. I've told the kids, if kids walk funny, they've probably been through a lot worse things than you have. If they're not walking straight, they're limping. They've got a bum foot that's, not weak or whatever. And Timmy says, I was always made up fun of in school and onward. I rode the higher ground because they weren't stealing my joy. Well, they were stealing mine. And I wanted to be accepted. Yeah, yesterday it told us not to protect ourselves. Kiki says if people would spend time teaching their children the Bible, we wouldn't have so much bullying. Uh-huh. A lot of that stems from when the Bible was taken out of schools. I had friends and I thought family, one was right, the other wrong. A lot of it stems when the government stopped parents doing their jobs. And they need prayers brought back to at least the first 6 grades. They need it in all the grades, Tina. Not just through 6th grade. They need it for. Timmy says, so now I have y'all. Yes, you do. Elaine says, I was bullied in the school in the suburbs of Chicago just because I was Puerto Rican. It took me talking to God. But the teenage years, they get rebellion at times. Yeah. You didn't follow the crowd then and don't now, Sis Timmy? Yeah. So we'll finish chapter 5 next time. And Timmy says, well, my daughter has what she's done to me through her daughter. Pray before children even leave the house. Yep, Kiki, that's a good idea. My daughter intends on homeschooling. They follow us home to fight with us, but that stopped when little me hit a 6-foot dog. Caught by accident with the handle of a shovel. All right. I hope you all have a wonderful day. His mother came to talk to my mother. And when she saw me, she told her son to pick somebody his own size. Never hit you again, you were 10. Wow. Wow. Well, I'm going to get going for now. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for sharing the Lord's word with us. You're welcome. I hope and pray you all have a wonderful day. God bless you all. Any fantastic plans for the weekend? We may have plans tomorrow. I'm not sure. Take care, everyone. God bless you all. Bye for now.